Sometimes betrayal comes wrapped in the face of someone you thought you knew, and my husband Marcus showed his true colors over $500,000 that was never his to begin with. The morning everything changed started like any other day in our small town of Cedar Grove, Virginia. I was in my studio, carefully putting the finishing touches on a commissioned painting. Watercolor landscapes had become my specialty over the past few years, even though they barely paid the bills. The early October sunlight streamed through the bay windows, casting a warm glow over my workspace, while the scent of acrylic paint and coffee filled the air. I'd been married to Marcus for 7 years, and from the outside, we probably looked like any other couple trying to make it work in today's economy. He worked as a mid-level manager at a local manufacturing plant, and I split my time between my art and teaching evening classes at the community center. We weren't rich by any means, but we had enough to keep our modest 2-bedroom house and put food on the table. Or at least that's what I thought until I started noticing the little things. The way Marcus would tense up when bills arrived, the mysterious calls he'd take in private, the growing distance between us that felt like more than just the normal wear and tear of a long-term relationship. That particular morning, I was working on a piece commissioned by Mrs. Henderson, one of my regular clients. She always requested peaceful scenes of the Blue Ridge Mountains, saying they reminded her of her childhood home. As I added subtle shadows to the mountainside, I could hear Marcus downstairs getting ready for work. The familiar sounds of his morning routine, the coffee maker gurgling, his heavy footsteps on the creaky floorboards, the jingle of his car keys, had become a sort of background music to my life. "Emily!" He called up from the bottom of the stairs, his voice carrying that edge of impatience I'd grown increasingly familiar with. "Did you see my blue tie? The one with the stripes?" I set down my brush, careful not to let it roll onto the painting. "Check the laundry room," I called back. "I think I washed it yesterday." I heard him mumble something under his breath, followed by more heavy footsteps. These days, it seemed like every conversation between us had an undercurrent of tension. Maybe it was the financial pressure. We'd been trying to save for a down payment on a bigger house, but somehow our savings never seemed to grow. Marcus had been pushing me to take on more teaching hours, suggesting that maybe it was time to put my hobby on hold and focus on something more practical. But painting wasn't just a hobby for me. It was my passion, my escape, the one thing that truly felt like mine in a life that sometimes seemed to be slipping through my fingers like water. I looked at the half-finished landscape before me, the way the mountains emerged from the mist, strong and eternal. Sometimes I wished I could be more like those mountains, unmovable, unshakable. "Found it," Marcus announced, appearing in my studio doorway, adjusting the tie around his neck. He looked every inch the successful businessman in his charcoal suit and polished shoes. His dark hair was neatly combed, and his clean-shaven face bore the confident expression he always wore to work. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite read. "Don't forget we're having dinner with James and Rebecca tonight." I nodded, though my heart sank a little. James was Marcus's childhood friend and now our financial advisor, though lately, his advice had felt more like criticism, especially regarding my career choices. "Right, of course. I'll make sure to finish up here in time." Marcus lingered in the doorway, his eyes scanning my studio with that same look he'd been giving it lately, part dismissal, part calculation. "You know, Emily, if you rented this space out as a home office, we could probably bring in an extra $1,000 a month." I gripped my paintbrush tighter, feeling the familiar weight of his disapproval. "We've talked about this, Marcus. My studio isn't just empty space to be rented out." He held up his hands in mock surrender, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just thinking about our future, honey. Someone has to." With that parting shot, he turned and headed downstairs. A few moments later, I heard the front door close and his car start up in the driveway. I sat there for a long moment, staring at my painting, but not really seeing it. When had we become this couple? The ones who couldn't have a conversation without it turning into a subtle battle. What happened to the man who used to bring me wildflowers just because, and who sat for hours listening to me talk about my dreams of becoming a full-time artist? With a sigh, I turned back to my work, trying to lose myself in the peaceful scene before me. But even as I painted, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something that would shatter the careful facade of our life together. I just didn't know yet how right that feeling would turn out to be, or that by the end of the week, I would be watching my future go up in flames in our dining room fireplace. The phone call came just after 2 in the afternoon. I was cleaning my brushes, getting ready to head to the community center for my afternoon class when my cell phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, with a Boston area code. "Hello, is this Emily Crawford?" a polished female voice inquired. "Yes, this is she," I replied, absent-mindedly wiping paint from my hands with a cloth. "This is Diana Montgomery from Montgomery, Price and Associates. I'm calling regarding your Uncle Richard Blackwood's estate." My hand froze mid-wipe. Uncle Richard? I hadn't heard that name in years. He was my mother's older brother, a brilliant but reclusive investment banker who disappeared from our lives after a falling out with my mother when I was just a teenager. I remembered him as the eccentric uncle who would send me art supplies every birthday, who understood my passion for painting in a way my parents never did. I wasn't aware that Uncle Richard had passed away, I managed to say, sinking into my paint-splattered chair. "Yes, Ms. Crawford. Mr. Blackwood passed away 3 weeks ago in his home in Massachusetts. I apologize if this comes as a shock. We've been working to locate his next of kin." There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "The reason for my call is that Mr. Blackwood named you as the primary beneficiary of his estate." The paintbrush I'd been holding clattered to the floor. "I'm sorry. What?" "Your uncle left you the majority of his estate, Ms. Crawford. The total value, after taxes, is approximately $2 million, with $500,000 to be released immediately upon completion of the necessary paperwork. The remainder will be held in a trust with specific conditions for its release." The room seemed to spin around me. $2 million? It couldn't be real. Uncle Richard had always lived modestly, in a small apartment in Boston. How had he accumulated such wealth? "There must be some mistake," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Uncle Richard and my mother hadn't spoken in years. Why would he? "Mr. Blackwood was quite clear in his will," Ms. Montgomery interrupted gently. "He also left a letter for you, which will be provided along with the inheritance paperwork. Would you be available to meet with our local representative tomorrow morning to begin the process?" I nodded, then realized she couldn't see me. Yes, of course." After arranging the meeting details, I sat in my studio for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. $2 million. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to set up my own gallery, to travel and paint the places I'd only dreamed of seeing, to finally prove to Marcus that my art wasn't just a hobby. Marcus. My stomach clenched as I thought about telling him. He'd be thrilled about the money, of course, but something made me hesitate. Lately, he'd been making comments about our money, even though he'd always treated my art income as separate, as my little thing. How would he react to this sudden windfall? I glanced at the clock and realized I was late for my class. Grabbing my teaching supplies, I headed out, my mind still reeling from the news. As I drove to the community center, I decided to wait to tell Marcus about the inheritance. At least until after the meeting tomorrow, until I had more details and had time to think things through. The afternoon class passed in a blur. I went through the motions of teaching basic brush techniques to my eager students, but my mind kept wandering to Uncle Richard. I remembered the last time I'd seen him, at my high school art show. He'd bought one of my paintings, an amateur piece of a stormy seascape, paying far more than it was worth. Never let anyone tell you that your Art isn't valuable, Emily, he'd said. The worth of something isn't just in its price tag. By the time I got home, Marcus's car was already in the driveway. I could see lights on in the dining room, reminding me of our dinner plans with James and Rebecca. Taking a deep breath, I plastered on a smile and went inside. Marcus was setting the table with our good china, the set his mother had given us for our wedding. "You're late," he said, not looking up. "Barely have time to change before they get here." "Sorry, got caught up with a student after class," I lied, hurrying upstairs to our bedroom. As I changed into a more dinner-appropriate outfit, I could hear Marcus moving around downstairs, probably judging whether the house was presentable enough for his friends. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down my dark blue dress, one of the few nice pieces I owned. The woman staring back at me looked different somehow, like she was carrying a huge secret. In a way, I supposed I was. Uncle Richard's inheritance felt like a lifeline, a chance at freedom I hadn't even known I needed until this afternoon. The doorbell rang, and I heard Marcus greeting James and Rebecca with his practiced charm. Taking one last look in the mirror, I squared my shoulders and headed downstairs, unaware that this dinner would set in motion events that would change everything. Dinner started exactly as I expected, with James dominating the conversation about investment opportunities and market trends, while Rebecca nodded along, occasionally touching up her immaculate lipstick. I pushed my salmon around the plate, trying to focus on the discussion, but finding my thoughts constantly drifting to the inheritance. "Emily?" Rebecca's voice cut through my thoughts. "James was just asking about your art classes." I looked up to find all three of them staring at me. James had that familiar condescending smile, the one he always wore when discussing my career. "Oh yes, they're going well. I just started a new beginner's watercolor course." "Still charging the same rates?" James asked, swirling his wine glass. "You know, with the economy the way it is, you could easily increase your fees by 20%. People pay for luxury experiences these days." Marcus cleared his throat. "Actually, we've been talking about Emily possibly scaling back the teaching. Maybe focus on something more substantial." The way he emphasized the last word made my chest tighten. "Really?" Rebecca perked up. "My company is actually hiring for an administrative position. The benefits are excellent, and it's a real career path." She emphasized real as if my current work was somehow imaginary. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm committed to my art. In fact, I've been thinking about expanding." "Emily," Marcus cut in, his tone sharp. "Let's not get into this now." The conversation moved on, but I barely heard it. My mind was racing, thinking about tomorrow's meeting, about the inheritance that could change everything. The weight of the secret felt heavier with each passing moment, especially as I watched Marcus and James exchange knowing looks every time the topic of finances came up. After dessert, while Rebecca was helping me clear the plates, she leaned in close. "I know it's none of my business," she whispered, "but James mentioned that Marcus has been having some financial difficulties at work. The administrative position really could be a good backup plan." I nearly dropped the plates I was holding. "Financial difficulties? What do you mean?" Rebecca's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Oh, I thought you knew. James said something about Marcus taking out some high-interest loans. I probably shouldn't have said anything." Before I could press for more details, Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway. "James wants to discuss some investment strategies." Before they head out, "Emily, would you join us?" The next hour was excruciating. James laid out various financial scenarios, each one making it clear that our current path was unsustainable. Marcus sat there nodding, his jaw tense, while I tried to process what Rebecca had told me about the loans. "The truth is," James concluded, closing his leather portfolio, "you need a significant capital injection to turn things around. Either that, or some serious lifestyle changes." His eyes flickered to my paint-stained fingers. After they left, Marcus and I stood in the silent dining room. The tension was palpable. "Were you going to tell me about the loans?" I finally asked. Marcus's head snapped up. "What?" "Rebecca mentioned something about high-interest loans. What's going on?" "Marcus?" He ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking slightly. "It's nothing I can't handle. Just some temporary cash flow issues at work. I was going to tell you once I had it sorted out." "How much?" "Emily." "How much, Marcus?" He sank into a dining chair. "About 400,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. 400? How? Why? When did this happen? It's complicated. There were some investment opportunities that didn't pan out, some business ventures that needed more capital than expected. But I'm handling it. I thought about the inheritance paperwork I would be receiving tomorrow, about the $500,000 that would be immediately available. The timing was almost too perfect, or too cruel. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Tell you what? That I'm drowning in debt while you play with your paints?" The words came out harsh, bitter. "That everything I've worked for is about to collapse because I can't make the payments? What good would that have done?" "I'm your wife, Marcus. We're supposed to be partners." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Partners? When have you ever contributed equally to this partnership? Your little art classes barely cover the grocery bills." Each word felt like a slap. I thought about all the times he'd dismissed my art, all the subtle and not-so-subtle suggestions that I needed to grow up and get a real job. And now I understood why. He'd been quietly digging us into a hole while maintaining his image of the successful businessman. Maybe if you'd been honest with me from the beginning. Maybe if you'd been willing to make some sacrifices. We stood there, the weight of unspoken accusations hanging between us. Looking at him now, I barely recognized the man I'd married. Or maybe I was finally seeing him clearly for the first time. "I'm going to bed," I said finally, too exhausted to continue the argument. As I climbed the stairs, I heard the distinct sound of a glass being filled with liquid. Tomorrow, I would be receiving inheritance papers worth $2 million. Tomorrow, I would have to decide whether to save the man who had just revealed how little he thought of me in my dreams. The irony was almost too much to bear. The Montgomery Price & Associates local office occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown building, a stark contrast to my usual haunts of art supply stores and community centers. I smoothed down my most professional-looking blazer, bought 3 years ago for a gallery showing, and tried to quiet the nervous flutter in my stomach. Sandra Chen, the local representative, welcomed me into her office with a warm smile that helped ease some of my tension. Her office was unexpectedly artistic, with several original paintings adorning the walls. I found myself automatically analyzing the brushwork as she sorted through her documents. "Before we begin the formal proceedings, Ms. Crawford, I have something for you." She pulled out a sealed envelope, slightly yellowed with age. "Your uncle left this with explicit instructions that you should read it before we discuss any details of the inheritance." My hands trembled slightly as I took the envelope. Uncle Richard's familiar, precise handwriting spelled out my name on the front. Inside was a letter, written on thick, expensive stationery. "Dear Emily, if you're reading this, then I've finally done what I should have done years ago. Made things right. First, let me apologize for my long absence from your life. The falling out with your mother was my greatest regret, but pride and stubbornness kept me from reaching out. However, I never stopped following your journey. I've watched from afar as you've pursued your passion for art, despite all the obstacles and discouragements. I've seen your work in local galleries, read reviews of your shows, and even anonymously purchased several of your pieces through various agents. Your talent has only grown stronger with time, matched by your dedication to teaching others. The money I'm leaving you isn't just an inheritance. It's an investment in your vision. I made my fortune through careful investment in things I believed in, and I believe in you, Emily. The initial sum of $500,000 is yours to use as you see fit. The remaining $5 million will be held in trust, to be released in full when you open your own gallery. Yes, a gallery. I know it's been your dream since you were 16, sketching plans for it in your notebooks. I'm not trying to control you from beyond the grave, but rather to give you the push you might need to finally take that leap. Remember what I told you at your high school art show? The worth of something isn't just in its price tag. Your art has worth, Emily. Your dreams have worth. Don't let anyone tell you differently. With love and faith in your future, Uncle Richard. I hadn't realized I was crying until a tear splashed onto the paper. Sandra quietly handed me a tissue, giving me a moment to compose myself. Your uncle was a remarkable man, she said softly. He spoke of you often during our meetings to arrange this. I had no idea he was even following my career, I managed to say, carefully folding the letter. Sandra nodded, pulling out a thick folder. Mr. Blackwood was very thorough in his planning. He set up the trust in a way that gives you complete autonomy over how you use the initial funds, while ensuring the larger sum remains protected for its intended purpose. As she walked me through the paperwork, explaining terms and conditions, my mind was racing. Uncle Richard hadn't just left me money. He'd left me a pathway to my dreams. But now those dreams were colliding with the harsh reality of Marcus's debt. The initial transfer can be completed within 24 hours of signing these documents, Sandra explained, sliding a stack of papers toward me. Would you like to proceed today? I stared at the signature line, pen hovering above it. Could I take these home to review first? Sandra's expression shifted slightly. Was it concern? Of course. Though I should mention that your uncle was very specific about one thing. These papers are solely for your signature. Any attempt to add another name or transfer the inheritance rights would void the entire agreement. The meaning behind her words was clear. Uncle Richard had ensured this money would be mine and mine alone. On the drive home, I took the long route through Cedar Grove's historic district, past the row of boutiques and galleries that I'd always dreamed of joining. There was even a vacant storefront with large windows perfect for displaying artwork. I parked across the street, imagining my own gallery there. Crawford Gallery, written in elegant letters on the window, my paintings displayed in the warm lighting, a space for teaching and creating and sharing my passion with others. Then I thought about Marcus, about the loans hanging over our heads, about his words from last night. $400,000 of debt. The same man who'd belittled my art for years now needed almost exactly the amount I was about to receive. I pulled Uncle Richard's letter from my bag, reading it again. Your art has worth, Emily. Your dreams have worth. When was the last time Marcus had made me feel that way? The inheritance papers sat in my passenger seat, their presence almost physical in the small space of my car. By tonight, I would have to make a decision, one that would either save my marriage or save my dreams. As I finally turned toward home, I still wasn't sure which path I would choose. But deep down, in a part of me that was growing stronger by the minute, I was beginning to realize they might not be compatible anymore. Part 5. Rising Tension. I found Marcus already home when I arrived, which was unusual for a Tuesday afternoon. He sat at our dining room table, his laptop open in front of him, but his eyes were fixed on the crackling fireplace. We'd rarely used it since moving in, but today flames danced behind the grate, casting shifting shadows across the room. You're home early, I said, clutching my bag with the inheritance papers closer. He didn't turn to look at me. James called. Apparently his wife has a hard time keeping secrets. His voice was eerily calm. Were you planning to tell me about your meeting with the lawyers today? My heart skipped a beat. Of course, Rebecca had told James, and James had told Marcus. In our small town, Secrets rarely stayed secret for long. I was going to tell you tonight, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. I needed time to process everything first. Marcus finally turned to face me, and I was struck by how different he looked. His usual polished appearance was disheveled, his eyes rimmed with red. Process what exactly? The fact that your uncle left you millions while your husband is drowning. In debt? It's not that simple, Marcus. Actually, it is that simple. He stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. $500,000, immediately available. That's what James told me. More than enough to clear my debts and give us a fresh start. I set my bag down carefully, the weight of Uncle Richard's letter somehow heavier than the legal documents. The money comes with conditions. Conditions? Marcus laughed, but it was a harsh sound. What conditions could possibly be more important than saving your husband from financial ruin? It's meant for a specific purpose. Uncle Richard wanted— Uncle Richard is dead. Marcus's shout echoed through the room. He's dead and we're very much alive, with very real problems that this money could solve. I flinched at his tone but stood my ground. This isn't about you, Marcus. The inheritance is meant to help me establish my own gallery, to pursue my art career. Your art career? He spat the words like they tasted bitter. Wake up, Emily. Your little hobby isn't going to pay our bills or keep us from losing everything I've worked for. My hobby? Heat rose in my cheeks. Is that really all you think it is? All you think I am? Marcus ran his hands through his hair in frustration. I think you're being selfish. I think you're choosing your paintings over your marriage. And what about you? I shot back. When were you planning to tell me about the loans? About how deep in debt we really were? Or were you just going to keep dismissing my work while secretly hoping for a miracle to save us? He stalked toward me, his face twisted with anger. Give me the papers. What? The inheritance papers. Give them to me. He held out his hand expectantly. I took a step back, bumping into the sideboard. No, they're mine, Marcus. Uncle Richard left them to me. Everything we have is supposed to be shared, Emily. That's what marriage means. He moved closer, his voice dropping to something that might have been meant to sound reasonable, but came out menacing. We can fix everything. Pay off the debts, start fresh. Maybe even fund your gallery later, when things are more stable. But I'd heard that tone before, the same one he'd used when convincing me to put off art school, to take on more teaching hours, to slowly shrink my dreams to fit his plans. I don't believe you. His expression hardened. What? I don't believe you'll ever support my dreams, Marcus? You never have. I clutched my bag tighter. The money wouldn't change anything. You'd find another reason why it's not the right time, why I should wait, why your needs should come first. So that's it? You're choosing your dead uncle's wishes over your living, breathing husband? No, I said quietly, feeling stronger with each word. I'm choosing myself. For the first time in our marriage, I'm choosing what I want. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, something dark and unfamiliar crossing his face. Then, moving faster than I could react, he grabbed my bag. Marcus, stop! But he was already pulling out the papers, his movements jerky and violent. In the firelight, I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. A desperate, almost manic gleam. If you won't make the right choice, he said, moving toward the fireplace, then I'll make it for you. Marcus, don't! I lunged forward, but he was already at the fireplace, holding my inheritance papers over the flames. The fire cast an eerie glow on his face, transforming my husband of 7 years into someone I barely recognized. Last chance, Emily, he said, dangling the documents precariously. Be reasonable. Think about our future. Time seemed to slow down as I stood there, watching the papers flutter above the flames. In that moment, Every compromise I'd made, every dream I'd deferred, every subtle dismissal I'd endured flashed through my mind. Uncle Richard's words echoed in my head. Your art has worth, Emily. Your dreams have worth. Our future? I found my voice, stronger than I expected. Or your future, Marcus, because from where I'm standing, those haven't been the same thing for a long time. His face contorted with rage. Fine, have it your way. With deliberate slowness, he released the papers into the fire. I watched, frozen in horror, as the flames began to consume the edges of my inheritance papers. The corners curled and blackened, Uncle Richard's careful planning literally going up in smoke. But as I stood there, something unexpected happened. Instead of despair, I felt a surge of clarity. You know what the funny thing is? I said, my voice steady despite the chaos unfolding before me. Those are copies. Marcus's head snapped up. What? Sandra, the lawyer. She made me sign the originals in her office this morning. Standard procedure, she said. Those, I gestured to the burning papers, are just copies for my records. The color drained from Marcus's face as he realized what he'd done, revealed his true nature while accomplishing nothing. He reached for the fireplace poker, desperately trying to retrieve the burning papers, but it was too late. They were already turning to ash. You're lying, he said, but his voice wavered with uncertainty. I pulled out Uncle Richard's letter from my jacket pocket, the one thing I hadn't kept in my bag. No, Marcus, I'm not. But you know what? I should thank you. Watching those papers burn just showed me exactly who you are, who you've always been. He took a step toward me, his hands shaking. Emily, Don't. I held up my hand, stopping him in his tracks. Don't try to explain or apologize or manipulate your way out of this. I see you now, Marcus. Really see you. And I don't like what I see. The fire crackled behind him, casting dancing shadows on the walls of what had once been our happy home. But now, all I could see were the signs I'd ignored. The controlling behavior masked as concern, the dismissal of my dreams disguised as practicality, the financial secrets hidden behind a facade of protection. What are you saying? His voice was barely a whisper. I straightened my shoulders, feeling stronger with each passing moment. I'm saying that burning those papers didn't just destroy copies of a document. You burned our marriage, Marcus. Whatever. Trust was left, whatever love remained. It's all ashes now. You can't mean that. We can work this out. Once the money comes through. The money? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about the money. It's about respect, trust, supporting each other's dreams, things you clearly know nothing about. I walked to the front closet and pulled out the overnight bag I'd packed that morning. Another thing Sandra had suggested, her experienced eyes having seen situations like this before. Marcus watched, seeming to shrink with each passing moment. Where are you going? Away from you, I said simply. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce papers. Divorce? The word seemed to jolt him out of his daze. Emily, you're overreacting. Think about what you're throwing away. I paused at the door, taking one last look at the man I'd once loved, still standing in front of the fireplace where he'd tried to burn away my dreams. No, Marcus. I'm finally thinking about what I'm saving. Myself. As I walked out into the cool evening air, I felt lighter than I had in years. Behind me, I could hear Marcus calling my name, his voice growing increasingly desperate. But I didn't look back. The sound of my car starting drowned out his shouts, and as I pulled away from the house, I caught a glimpse of him in my rearview mirror, standing in the doorway, illuminated by the same fire that had revealed his true nature. Tomorrow, I would call Sandra and start the process of securing my inheritance and my future. Tonight, I would mourn the end of my marriage and celebrate the beginning of my freedom. Uncle Richard's letter crinkled in my pocket, a reminder that some people, even those we've lost, believe in our dreams more than those closest to us. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was truly mine to choose. The neon vacancy sign of the Pinewood Motel buzzed faintly outside my second-floor window. I'd chosen this place specifically because it was the last place Marcus would look, the complete opposite of his preferred luxury hotels. The dated floral wallpaper and slightly musty carpet weren't exactly comforting, but they offered something more valuable: anonymity. I sat cross-legged on the bed, my phone buzzing for the 20th time with Marcus's calls and messages. After the 15th missed call, I'd finally turned off the ringer. Now I just watched the screen light up silently, his desperate attempts at contact becoming increasingly frequent. "You did the right thing," Claire's voice crackled through my laptop speakers. My oldest friend from art school was now a successful gallery owner in Seattle, and despite the 3-hour time difference, she'd picked up my video call immediately. I hugged my knees to my chest, still wearing the clothes I'd fled the house in. Then why do I feel like I'm going to throw up? Claire's pixelated image leaned closer to her camera. "Because you just walked away from 7 years of your life. You're allowed to feel sick about it. But Emily, honey, you should have left the first time he tried to make you quit painting." "He never actually said to quit," I defended automatically, then caught myself. Old habits die hard. He just made it impossible not to feel guilty about it. Classic manipulation. Claire took a sip from her coffee mug, knowing her, probably her third espresso of the morning. "The Marcus I met at your wedding would have never burned legal documents in a fireplace. But the Marcus you've been describing over the past few years? That guy's been working up to this kind of dramatic betrayal for a long time." She was right. I thought back to the early days of our marriage, when Marcus would proudly show off my paintings to his colleagues. Somewhere along the way, that pride had turned to tolerance, then to barely concealed disdain. The change had been so gradual I'd hardly noticed it happening. "I keep thinking about Uncle Richard," I said, pulling his letter from my jacket pocket. The paper was worn now from multiple readings. "How did he know, Claire? How did he know I'd need this kind of push to break free?" "Because he was watching," Claire replied simply. "Sometimes it takes someone on the outside to see what's really going on. Speaking of which." She disappeared from frame for a moment, then returned with a notebook. "I've been doing some research since you first called. There's a gorgeous little gallery space available in the Arts District here in Seattle. Great lighting, excellent foot traffic, and the rent is surprisingly reasonable." I blinked. "Seattle? Claire, I can't just—" "Why not? What's keeping you in Cedar Grove now?" "Marcus? That suffocating small-town attitude that treats art like a cute hobby rather than a career?" Her voice softened. "Emily, you're about to receive an inheritance specifically meant to help you open a gallery. You have an experienced gallery owner as a best friend who'd love to mentor you. Maybe it's time for a completely fresh start." Before I could respond, my phone lit up again. But this time it wasn't Marcus. It was a text from James. "Marcus told me what happened. You're making a huge mistake. That money could save everything we've worked for." "We?" I said aloud, anger flaring. "Since when was it we?" "What?" Claire asked. I showed her the text. Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, so now the financial advisor best friend is trying to guilt you too?" "Emily, I'm starting to think this whole situation is bigger than just Marcus's loans." A knock at my motel room door made me jump. "Hold on," I whispered to Claire, my heart racing. The knock came again, more insistent this time. "Emily," a familiar voice called out. "It's Rebecca. Please, we need to talk." I stared at the door in disbelief. How had she found me? "Don't you dare open that door," Claire warned, reading my expression. Nothing good can come from talking to any of them right now. But as Rebecca continued to knock, something clicked in my mind. The mysterious loans, James's involvement, Rebecca's convenient job offer. What if this wasn't just about Marcus's financial troubles? What if there was something bigger going on? "Claire," I said slowly, "I need to call Sandra Chen. Something's not adding up here." "The inheritance lawyer? It's the middle of the night. There." She gave me her emergency number for a reason. I picked up my phone, ignoring the new barrage of texts from Marcus. I need to make sure the inheritance is secure. Right now. The knocking had stopped, but I could hear Rebecca's voice, lower now, talking to someone. More than one set of footsteps moved past my door. "Emily?" Claire's voice was urgent. "Pack your bag. Now. Come to Seattle tonight. I mean it. I don't like what's happening there." As if to emphasize her point, my phone buzzed with a final text from Marcus. "You have no idea what you're doing. That money isn't just about us anymore. There are other people involved. Important people. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stared at the message, a chill running down my spine despite the motel's overactive heating system. Claire was right. It was time to run. Not just from Marcus, but from whatever web of secrets and lies I'd unknowingly stumbled into. I just hoped I could find Sandra Chen before it was too late. Sandra Chen answered on the third ring, her voice alert despite the late hour. "Emily? Is everything all right?" I paced the small motel room, keeping my voice low. "I need to know if the inheritance is secure. Right now, can anyone else access it or block it?" There was a pause, then the sound of typing. "I'm looking at the documents now. Your signature this morning activated all the security protocols your uncle put in place. The initial transfer has already been—" She stopped abruptly. "Emily, someone just tried to access the account using your social security number." My blood ran cold. "What? Who?" "The attempt came from James Pierce's office. He's trying to claim power of attorney over your finances." More typing. "Emily, listen carefully. Are you somewhere safe?" I glanced at the door, where Rebecca's voice had gone quiet. "I'm not sure anymore." "Don't tell me where you are, but leave immediately. Go somewhere public. I'm calling our security team and the police. Your uncle." She hesitated. "Your uncle left specific instructions about what to do if something like this happened." "What do you mean, something like this?" "Richard Blackwood didn't just leave you money, Emily. He left evidence, documents about certain investment schemes he'd uncovered, people who were using art galleries for money laundering. James Pierce's name is all over those files. The pieces started falling into place. Marcus's mysterious loans, James's insistence on handling all our finances, the pressure to give up my art career. They were going to use my gallery, weren't they? Once I got the inheritance? It certainly looks that way. Your uncle spent years gathering evidence. He knew they'd try to get to his money through you." Sandra's voice turned urgent. "Emily, these people, they're dangerous. Get out of there, now." As if on cue, I heard a key card. Reader beep outside my door. The handle started to turn. "They're here," I whispered into the phone, grabbing my bag. "Someone got a key. Get to the window, now." I was already moving, thanking whatever instinct had made me choose a second-floor room. The old-style motel had a metal fire escape, rusted but sturdy enough. As the door began to open, I climbed out onto the narrow platform. "Emily, don't be stupid," Marcus's voice called from inside the room. "We just want to talk." I looked down at the parking lot 2 stories below. My car was blocked in by 2 unfamiliar vehicles, expensive black SUVs that screamed, trying too hard to look inconspicuous. "The police are on their way," Sandra said in my ear. "But you need to move now." I heard footsteps approaching the window. Making a split-second decision, I dropped my bag onto the dumpster below and started climbing down the fire escape. The metal creaked ominously but held. "She's on the fire escape," Rebecca's voice called out. I heard multiple footsteps rushing back toward the door. I reached the dumpster, retrieved my bag, and ran. Not toward the parking lot where they'd expect, but toward the woods behind the motel. Years of hiking to find scenic painting spots had made me comfortable in the dark among trees. "Emily, I'm tracking your phone," Sandra said. "There's a 24-hour diner 2 miles east of your location. Get there, go inside where there are witnesses. I'll have someone waiting." I ended the call but kept running, my art teacher's sensible shoes proving more practical than I'd ever expected. Behind me, I could hear voices calling my name, flashlight, beams cutting through the darkness. The gravity of what was happening hit me as I ran. This wasn't just about Marcus burning papers in a fit of rage anymore. This was about years of careful planning, both Uncle Richard's and James's. One trying to protect me, the other trying to use me. And Marcus. Had he known all along? Had our entire marriage been part of their scheme? The trees thinned out, and I could see lights in the distance. The highway. The diner would be just beyond it. My lungs burned, but I kept moving. Uncle Richard had spent years preparing for this moment, making sure I'd have a chance to escape, whatever trap they'd set. I wasn't going to waste his efforts. Behind me, the voices had faded, but I could hear cars on the motel's access road. They were trying to cut me off. But they didn't know these woods, didn't know the hidden paths I'd explored while searching for inspiration for my landscapes. As I emerged onto the highway, I saw the diner's neon sign glowing in the distance. And there, parked in front, was a sleek black sedan with diplomatic plates. A woman in a suit stood beside it, scanning the area alertly. I'd made it. But as I hurried toward the diner, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Whatever web of lies and corruption I'd stumbled into, I was now part of it. The only question was, would I be a victim or would I fight back? Uncle Richard had chosen to fight. Now it was my turn to make the same choice. The woman in the suit turned out to be Agent Sarah Martinez of the FBI's white-collar crime division. She whisked me into the diner, ordered coffee we wouldn't drink, and laid out a truth more staggering than anything I could have imagined. "Your uncle didn't just stumble upon their operation," she explained, her voice low despite the empty diner. "He spent the last decade of his life deliberately infiltrating it. The inheritance wasn't just about giving you a fresh start. It was about completing his investigation." I wrapped my hands around the warm coffee mug, trying to process what she was telling me. "So the gallery condition in the will was a trap," she nodded. "Your uncle knew they'd try to use it as a front for their money laundering operation, just like they've done with dozens of other galleries across the country. James Pierce isn't just a small-town financial advisor. He's a key player in an international art fraud scheme." My mind flashed back to all those meetings in James's office, the way he'd always steered conversations toward the art world, his insistence on handling all our finances. "And Marcus?" Agent Martinez's expression softened slightly. "We're not entirely sure of your husband's level of involvement. Our surveillance suggests he was brought in about 3 years ago, right around the time he started having financial troubles." 3 years ago. Right when he'd started pushing harder against my art career, when the subtle undermining had turned into active discouragement. Had any of it been real? Had he ever loved me? Or had I just been a convenient mark? "We've been building a case for years," Martinez continued, "but we could never get close enough to gather concrete evidence. Your uncle changed that. She stopped abruptly, her hand moving to her earpiece. Her expression turned serious. "They just accessed your home's security system. A team is headed there now." "What? Why would they go to the house? Is there anything there? Something they might be looking for?" I started to shake my head, then froze. "Uncle Richard's letter, the original one from the inheritance papers. I left it in my studio." Martinez was already standing, dropping cash on the table. "We need to move. Now." The drive to my house was tense. Martinez explained more about the investigation, about how art galleries were perfect for laundering money, inflated prices, subjective values, international buyers. James and his associates had built a network of seemingly legitimate galleries, each one pumping millions in dirty money through the art market. "Your uncle documented everything," she said, navigating the dark streets with practiced ease. "Account numbers, transactions, connections, but he hid the evidence in a way only you could access." "Me? But I don't know anything about—" I stopped as realization dawned. "The paintings. The ones he bought through agents." Martinez smiled grimly. "Every piece he purchased from you contains encoded information, account numbers hidden in brushstrokes, transaction dates, and color patterns. He knew they'd never think to look at student art for evidence." We turned onto my street, and I saw them, dark figures moving around my house. The security lights were off, but I could see flashlights moving in my studio window. "Stay in the car," Martinez ordered, reaching for her weapon. But before she could open her door, something extraordinary happened. The lights in my studio suddenly blazed to life. Though I knew the power had been cut, I could see the utility truck down the street. Through the windows, I watched as my easels began to topple, one after another, like dominoes. Paint cans tipped over, spreading their contents across the floor in impossible patterns. "What the hell?" Martinez breathed, watching as chaos erupted in my studio. The dark figures were rushing out now, slipping in the paint, looking terrified. As they fled, I saw something that made my heart stop. In the spilled paint on the floor, clear as day, was a message. "Protect her," written in Uncle Richard's distinctive handwriting. Martinez was on her radio, calling for backup, but I couldn't take my eyes off my studio. The lights were dimming now, the chaos settling. But I felt something I'd never felt before. A presence, familiar yet impossible. "He's still protecting me," I whispered. Martinez glanced at me sharply. "What?" But before I could respond, her radio crackled to life. They'd caught 2 of the intruders trying to flee, and one of them was James Pierce himself. As FBI vehicles began arriving, their lights painting the street in red and blue, I sat in Martinez's car, watching my former life transform into a crime scene. Yet somehow, I felt safer than I had in years. Uncle Richard had known exactly what he was doing. He'd protected me in life through his distance, and now, somehow, he was protecting me in death through his art. The mystery was only beginning to unravel. The FBI's mobile command center hummed with activity as agents processed evidence from my studio. I sat in a corner, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, watching as they photographed and cataloged every painting I'd ever created. Each one potentially held pieces of Uncle Richard's carefully constructed puzzle. "Ms. Crawford?" A young agent approached with a tablet. "We need you to look at something." On the screen was security camera footage from my studio, taken just before the strange incident. The timestamp showed 11:42 p.m. As I watched, I saw James and 3 other men entering through the back door. They moved with purpose, clearly knowing what they were looking for. Then, at 11:47 p.m., something bizarre happened. The temperature reading in the corner of the footage dropped dramatically, plummeting from 72 degrees to 45 in seconds. The men's breath became visible in the suddenly cold air. And then, "Watch the paintings," the agent said softly. My works, landscapes, seascapes, city scenes, began to change. Colors shifted, patterns emerged. Hidden within each brushstroke, mathematical sequences revealed themselves. Account numbers, dates, coordinates. All the evidence Uncle Richard had carefully encoded into the art he'd commissioned from me over the years. He knew, I breathed. He knew they'd come looking eventually. That's why he kept buying my work, kept encouraging me to develop my own style. Agent Martinez appeared beside me, holding a file. Your uncle was brilliant. He hid the evidence in plain sight, knowing they'd never think to look at amateur art for their financial records. But he needed your specific artistic style, your way of layering colors, your brushstroke patterns, to make it work. But the message on the floor, I said. The lights, the chaos. That wasn't part of his plan, was it? Martinez hesitated. We're classifying that as an unexplained event. Though I have to admit, the handwriting analysis of that message matches your uncle's perfectly. A chill ran down my spine, but it wasn't an unpleasant one. Even now, Uncle Richard was full of surprises. We found this in James's pocket, Martinez continued, pulling out a familiar envelope. Uncle Richard's letter. They were trying to destroy it. But look at what happens when we do this. She held the letter under a UV light. Hidden text appeared between the lines, written in what looked like some kind of special ink. My dearest Emily, Martinez read. If they're reading this message, then everything has gone according to plan. The evidence they're looking for isn't just in your paintings. It's in every piece of art I've collected over the past decade. The gallery clause in my will wasn't just about fulfilling your dream. It was about creating a space where all these pieces could come together, telling the full story of their crimes. I sat back, stunned. So the trust fund, the gallery requirement, was a masterstroke, Martinez finished. He knew they'd try to use your gallery as part of their laundering operation, but in doing so, they'd be putting all the evidence of their previous crimes in one place. Evidence hidden in art they themselves had sold through their network, art that your uncle had been quietly collecting for years. The implications were staggering. Uncle Richard hadn't just been gathering evidence, he'd been setting up an elaborate trap that would take years to spring. And I had been the key to all of it, though I'd never known. There's more, Martinez said, turning the letter over. Instructions for you, specifically about Marcus. My heart clenched at my husband's name. What about him? Your uncle believed he was brought into the operation under duress. The loans, the financial pressure, it was all manufactured to force him to cooperate. But Richard wasn't certain of Marcus's ultimate loyalty. And now? Martinez checked her phone. We picked him up trying to access your bank accounts. He's being questioned now. But Emily... She paused, choosing her words carefully. The evidence suggests he really didn't know the full scope of what was happening. He thought it was just financial fraud, not international money laundering, and art theft. I thought about Marcus standing in front of our fireplace, desperately trying to burn what he thought were the inheritance papers. Had he been trying to protect himself? Or had he been trying to protect me from something he didn't fully understand? Would you like to talk to him? Martinez asked gently. I stared at my paintings, now revealed to be so much more than just art. Each one held secrets, evidence, pieces of a puzzle my uncle had spent years crafting, and somewhere in all of this was the truth about my marriage. Yes, I said finally. But first, I need to understand exactly what's in these paintings. I need to know everything. Martinez nodded, signaling to one of the forensic analysts. Your uncle left detailed instructions for decoding the evidence. Are you ready to learn how to read your own art in a completely new way? I stood up, letting the blanket fall away. It was time to uncover the full truth about the fraud, about Marcus, about everything. Uncle Richard had trusted me with his legacy. Now it was time to understand exactly what that meant. The FBI's art analysis lab was nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of the sterile, clinical environment I'd expected, the space felt more like a cross between an artist's studio and a high-tech command center. Easels stood next to complex scanning equipment, and paint analysis tools shared space with powerful computers. Dr. Helena Wright, the FBI's lead art forensics expert, had flown in specifically for this case She was a tall woman with steel gray hair and paint-stained hands that somehow looked natural with her crisp FBI jacket. "Your uncle," she said, adjusting a large magnifying apparatus over one of my seascapes, "was a genius. I've been analyzing art fraud for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like this." I watched as she manipulated the controls, and suddenly my simple painting of waves crashing against rocks transformed on the monitor beside us. Hidden patterns emerged, visible only under specific light frequencies. "See these wave patterns?" She pointed to a seemingly random arrangement of brushstrokes. "They're actually a sophisticated code. Each wave contains a sequence of numbers, dates, times, amounts. But the brilliant part is that they only make sense when painted in your specific style." "I don't understand," I said, leaning closer. "How could he know how I would paint each piece?" Helena smiled. "He didn't. Instead, he adapted his code to work with your natural artistic evolution. Every time you developed a new technique or changed your style, he found ways to incorporate it into his system. These commissions weren't just about hiding evidence. They were about helping you grow as an artist." She pulled up another painting, this one a cityscape I'd done 2 years ago. "Look at how your brush strokes changed here. More confident, more distinctive. And see how the code adapted? The information is hidden in the negative space now, using your unique way of defining boundaries between objects." "All those critiques he sent through his agents," I whispered. "The specific requests for certain techniques. We're teaching you the exact style he needed for his code to work." Helena's eyes sparkled with professional admiration. "He was building a cipher that only exists in the way you specifically paint. Even if they got their hands on the paintings, they couldn't decode them without understanding your artistic evolution." A lump formed in my throat. Even in his absence, Uncle Richard had been teaching me, guiding me, preparing me for this moment. "There's something else you need to see," Helena said, her tone growing serious. She led me to a separate room where another painting was set up, but this one wasn't mine. This was found in Richard's apartment after his death, his last work. I stared at the canvas, confusion washing over me. It was amateur at best, nothing like the sophisticated financial analyst I remembered. The scene was simple. A young girl sitting at an easel, painting. The girl was me, I realized with a start, copied from an old photograph. "Look closer," Helena urged. As I studied the painting, something clicked. The awkward brush strokes, the seemingly clumsy composition. It was all deliberate. Uncle Richard had painted it in an approximation of my early style back when I was first learning to paint. "He embedded one final message in this," Helena explained, adjusting her equipment. "But it could only be decoded by someone who understood both the technical aspects of his cipher and the emotional context of your artistic journey." The scanning equipment hummed to life, and text began to appear on the screen, hidden within the painting's layers. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, then everything has fallen into place. You've discovered your strength, just as I always knew you would. The evidence in your paintings will expose their operation, but this message is about something more important. I didn't just choose you because you were my niece, or because of your artistic talent. I chose you because I saw in you the same thing I saw in myself, the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it means standing alone. The gallery isn't just your dream anymore. It's a weapon against those who would use art to hide their crimes. Every painting you create from now on will carry the truth in its brushstrokes, whether you encode messages or not, because you understand now that art isn't just about beauty, it's about honesty. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to teach you in person, but know that every commission, every critique, every suggestion was my way of preparing you for this moment. You're ready now, Emily. Ready to be not just an artist, but a guardian of truth through art. All my love, Uncle Richard. I realized I was crying only when Helena quietly handed me a tissue. The message continued, containing detailed instructions about the gallery, about future paintings, about how to continue Uncle Richard's work. But it was the personal message that hit me hardest. The realization that his belief in me had been genuine, his guidance deliberate, his love real. "Your uncle," Helena said softly, "created something unprecedented here, a way to fight crime through art itself. The question is, are you ready to continue his work?" I looked at my paintings lined up along the wall, each one now revealed to be both art and evidence, beauty and truth intertwined. I thought about the gallery that would now serve a dual purpose, a dream fulfilled and a mission continued. "Yes," I said, straightening my shoulders. "Show me everything. Show me how to read the messages, how to continue the code." Helena nodded approvingly. "Then let's begin. We have a lot to cover, and according to your uncle's notes, there's more. Evidence still out there, hidden in artwork we haven't found yet." As we bent over the paintings, Helena beginning my education in this new language of hidden truths, I felt Uncle Richard's presence stronger than ever. He had given me more than an inheritance. He had given me a purpose. The artist in me had always known that every painting tells a story. Now I understood that some stories could change the world. I spent the next 3 days in the FBI's art analysis lab, absorbing everything Helena could teach me about Uncle Richard's sophisticated coding system. My paintings were spread out chronologically, telling a story I'd never known I was helping to tell. Each piece was a chapter in Uncle Richard's meticulous documentation of the money laundering operation. "The genius is in the simplicity," Helena explained, adjusting her spectacles as she showed me yet another hidden pattern. "Look at this landscape. From 3 years ago. The rock formations you painted? They're actually a visual representation of bank transfers. Each layer represents a different shell company." I leaned closer to the monitor, seeing my art transform into data. "And these shadows in the valley? Dates and amounts. Your natural tendency to layer dark colors created the perfect hiding place for the most damaging evidence." Helena's eyes sparkled with professional admiration. "But here's where it gets fascinating. When you started experimenting with a lighter palette last year, your uncle adapted the code to work with negative space instead. As we worked, Agent Martinez kept us updated on the investigation's progress. James Pierce had started talking, hoping for a deal. His confession painted a picture of an operation far larger than anyone had suspected. "He claims Marcus was brought in specifically because of you," Martinez told me during one of our breaks. "They needed someone close to you, someone who could eventually influence how you'd use your inheritance. The news should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt oddly detached, as if Marcus belonged to a different life, one I'd already left behind." "Have you decided if you want to speak with him?" Martinez asked gently. I looked at my paintings, each one now revealed to be both art and evidence. "Not yet. First, I need to understand everything, every piece of the puzzle." Helena appeared with another canvas, one of my earliest works that Uncle Richard had purchased. "Speaking of puzzles, look at this. Your early style was actually perfect for hiding the most crucial information. The slightly uneven brushstrokes that you were so self-conscious about, they're practically unbreakable encryption." As she spoke, her equipment revealed another layer of hidden data. This time, I recognized the patterns without help. Account numbers, dates, connections between seemingly unrelated galleries across the country. "It's like learning to read a new language," I murmured, "but one I've been speaking all along without knowing it." "Exactly," Helena beamed. "And now that you understand the basics, there's something else you need to see." She led me to a separate workspace where a blank canvas was set up. "Your uncle left specific instructions about this. Once you understood the code, you were supposed to create one final piece, a key that only you could paint." I picked up a brush, feeling its familiar weight. "What am I supposed to paint?" "That's the brilliant part," Helena said. "Anything you want. the code exists in your natural style now. Whatever you create will automatically carry the encryption, but only if you paint it exactly as you would have before knowing about any of this. I stared at the blank canvas, understanding the challenge. Could I paint with the same innocence? The same natural instincts now that I knew about the hidden messages? Taking a deep breath, I began to paint. I chose a scene from memory, the view from Uncle Richard's apartment in Boston, where he'd watched me grow as an artist from afar. The city skyline emerged under my brush, but this time I could see how my natural techniques created the perfect hiding places for information. Hours passed as I worked, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of creation. When I finally stepped back, Helena immediately began scanning the painting. "Remarkable," she breathed, studying the results. "You've done it. The encryption is perfect, even stronger than in your previous works. And look at this." She pointed to a pattern that had emerged in the sky I'd painted. "This isn't just a key to the code, it's a map. These patterns, when overlaid with your other paintings, reveal locations, places where evidence is still hidden." Martinez, who had been watching silently, stepped forward. "How many locations?" "At least a dozen," Helena replied, her fingers flying over her keyboard. "Galleries, auction houses, private collections, all connected to the laundering operation." I studied my painting, seeing it with both artists' and investigators' eyes. He knew, didn't he? Knew that once I understood the code, I'd never be able to paint the same way again. This was my last chance to create something with that same innocence. Helena nodded solemnly. "But look what you've created instead. A bridge between your old life and your new one. A piece that honors both the artist you were and the guardian you're becoming." Guardian. The word echoed in my mind, reminding me of Uncle Richard's final message. Art wasn't just about beauty anymore. It was about truth, about justice. "So, what happens now?" I asked, looking between Helena and Martinez. "Now," Martinez said, "we start planning the gallery opening. Your uncle's will required it to be established within 30 days of receiving the inheritance. We'll use it as a hub for the investigation, a way to draw out more players in the operation." "But first," Helena interjected, "you need to decide about Marcus. He's still asking to speak with you, and given what we now know about his involvement." I looked at my new painting, still wet on the canvas. The old Emily might have rushed to hear Marcus's explanation, eager to understand, to forgive. But I wasn't that person anymore. "Tomorrow," I said firmly. "First, I want to learn everything there is to know about this code, about my part in all of this." Both women nodded, understanding. I turned back to my paintings, each one a chapter in a story I was only beginning to understand. The artist in me had died a little today, replaced by something stronger, more purposeful. Uncle. Richard had given me more than an inheritance or a mission. He'd given me a new way of seeing, not just art, but truth itself. The FBI's interview room was nothing like the ones you see on television. Instead of harsh fluorescent lighting and metal furniture, it was designed to look almost like a small office. But the mirrors were still two-way glass, and I knew agents were watching as Marcus was led in, looking nothing like the confident man who had tried to burn my inheritance papers just days ago. "Emily," he breathed, stopping short when he saw me. His suit was wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. "I've been trying to explain." "I'm not here for explanations," I cut him off, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm here to offer you a choice." He sank into the chair across from me, confusion crossing his face. Behind him, through the two-way glass, I knew Helena and Martinez were watching, ready to proceed with whichever path this conversation took. "Agent Martinez tells me you've been partially cooperating," I continued, laying out the folder Helena had prepared. "But you haven't given them everything. You're still protecting someone." Marcus's eyes darted to the folder. "I told them what?" I know about James's operation. No, I interrupted again, opening the folder to reveal one of my paintings, a cityscape from 2 years ago. You haven't told them about the connection to Riverside Gallery or about the shipments that came through. They're every third Thursday. His face went pale. How did you... Because it's all here. I pointed to specific areas of the painting, using the knowledge Helena had drilled into me over the past few days. The dates, the amounts, the contact names, everything. Uncle Richard encoded it all into the art he commissioned from me. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by fear. That's impossible. Is it? I pulled out another painting, this one from last year. Should we talk about the Anderson account? Or maybe the offshore transfers that went through Dubai? Marcus slumped in his chair, the last of his resistance crumbling. You don't understand. These people? They're dangerous. If I tell you everything... They're already finished, I said firmly. The FBI has enough evidence from my paintings alone to take down the entire network. The only question is whether you want to be buried with them or help us make sure we get everyone. Everyone? His voice cracked slightly. Including your father. Marcus's head snapped up. For a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd married. Vulnerable, human. How did you know? Uncle Richard knew. He tracked the connections back to the source. Your father wasn't just James's client. He was the one who started the whole operation 15 years ago. That's why you got involved, isn't it? To protect him? Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. He was going to lose everything. The family business, the house, everything. James offered a way out, but it came with conditions. When they found out I was dating you, that your uncle was Richard Blackwood. They saw an opportunity. I finished. A way to get close to Uncle Richard's money, to use the inheritance to expand their operation. At first, that's all it was supposed to be. Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. But then I fell in love with you. Really fell in love. That wasn't part of the plan. But you still tried to control me, I said, keeping my voice level. Still tried to crush my dreams, make me doubt myself. Was that love, Marcus? He looked away. I thought I was protecting you. If you gave up art, stepped away from that world, maybe you'd be safe when everything fell apart. By destroying who I was? By making me small enough to fit into your idea of safety? I shook my head. That's not protection, Marcus. That's control. What choice did I have? The same choice you have now. I laid out another document, a cooperation agreement Martinez had prepared. Tell us everything. Help us make sure we get all of them, including your father. In return, you get immunity and witness protection. Marcus stared at the agreement. And if I don't? Then I start decoding more paintings. Every transaction, every name, every crime, all of it comes to light, including your father's role in all of it. You've changed, he said softly, studying my face. Yes, I agreed. I finally became who I was always meant to be. The question is, who are you going to choose to be? For a long moment, Marcus sat in silence, looking between me and the agreement. Finally, he reached for the pen. I never deserved you, he said as he signed his name. No, I replied, standing up. You didn't. But you can deserve your second chance. As I walked out of the interview room, Martinez met me with an approving nod. Well done. We'll get everything from him now. Was I right? About his father? Spot on. Helena found the evidence in your earliest paintings. Richard had been tracking the elder Mr. Brennan's activities for years. I thought about Marcus, about the weight of family expectations and the choices we make because of them. Make sure he gets the protection he was promised. Whatever else he did, he made the right choice in the end. And what about you? Martinez asked as we walked back to the lab. Ready to start planning the gallery opening? I smiled, thinking about the blank canvas waiting for me, about the new way I could now use my art to protect truth and justice. Yes, but first, Helena promised to teach me more about incorporating active surveillance coding into contemporary pieces. You're really embracing this guardian of truth through art role, aren't you? Uncle Richard believed in me, I said, picking up a brush. Now I finally understand why. Behind me, Helena was already setting up her equipment, ready to help me merge my artistic vision with this new purpose. My paintings would never be the same. They would be something more. Each brushstroke a statement of truth, each color a guardian of justice. The artist I had been was gone, but in her place stood someone stronger. Someone who could paint not just beauty, but truth itself. The news of James Pierce's arrest sent shockwaves through Cedar Grove. Within days, rumors were flying about FBI investigations, money laundering, and art fraud. But no one connected it to me yet, the quiet art teacher who had suddenly disappeared from her usual spots around town. I was working late in the FBI lab, practicing Helena's techniques with a new painting, when Martinez burst in with a concerned expression. "We have a problem," she announced, tablet in hand. "Rebecca Pierce just called a press conference. She's planning to go public with everything, but her version of events." Helena and I watched the live feed as Rebecca, perfectly coiffed despite her husband's arrest, stood before a crowd of reporters. She painted a compelling picture. Her innocent husband, framed by a vindictive artist, and her mysterious uncle. She never mentioned me by name, but her implications were clear. "That manipulative little gold digger," she said, dabbing at artificial. Tears. Took advantage of my James's kindness. She and her uncle set him up, all for money and revenge. "She's trying to poison the jury pool," Martinez muttered. "Make any future trial about you instead of them." But I was watching something else. The way Rebecca's hands kept straying to her expensive necklace. How her eyes darted to someone off camera every few seconds. "She's not doing this alone," I said, reaching for a blank canvas. "Look at her. Body language. Someone's pulling her strings." Helena moved closer, intrigued. "What are you thinking?" "Uncle Richard taught me to read people through art," I explained, starting to sketch rapidly. "He said every person has tells, just like every painting has a signature. Rebecca's telling us something with every nervous gesture." My hands moved. Quickly, capturing Rebecca's stance, the angle of her shoulders, the direction of her glances. Helena's equipment hummed to life, scanning my work in real time. "There," I pointed to the emerging pattern. "She keeps looking left, about 15 degrees up. There must be someone in that window of the courthouse." Martinez was already on her phone, directing agents to investigate. Within minutes, we had confirmation. Surveillance cameras had caught Thomas Brennan, Marcus's father, watching from exactly where I'd indicated. "He's getting desperate," Martinez said. "With Marcus cooperating, he's trying to discredit the whole investigation before we can get to him." "It's more than that," I replied, still painting. "Look at Rebecca's necklace. It's new, Art Deco style, probably from the Carson collection that went missing last year. He's reminding her that she's implicated too, that she has as much to lose as anyone." Helena's equipment beeped, confirming my analysis. The necklace's pattern matched a piece from the stolen Carson collection, its value estimated at over $2 million. "How did you know about the Carson collection?" Martinez asked, impressed. "Uncle Richard's notes mentioned it, one of the biggest art heists they'd pulled off. He suspected it was being used as leverage to keep people in line." I added final touches to the painting, revealing more hidden connections. "Rebecca's not just James's wife. She's Thomas Brennan's inside source at the insurance company that handled the Carson claim." Martinez was already mobilizing teams. "If we can prove she helped fake the insurance documentation." She'll flip on Thomas, Helena finished, just like Marcus did. But something still bothered me. It's too obvious, I said, studying my painting. Thomas Brennan is smarter than this. Why let Rebecca wear stolen jewelry to a press conference? Unless... Helena adjusted her scanning equipment, revealing new layers in the painting. Unless this isn't about Rebecca at all. It's about what's happening somewhere else while we're all focused on her. I thought about Uncle Richard's lessons in misdirection, how he'd used obvious patterns to hide deeper truths. The gallery opening is in 3 days. Everyone knows about it. It's been in all the papers. Perfect timing for moving something they don't want us to find, Martinez realized. While we're focused on protecting you and the gallery, they're planning something bigger. I started another painting, this one focused on the gallery layout. But Uncle Richard would have anticipated this. He knew Thomas Brennan better than anyone. As I worked, patterns emerged. Security vulnerabilities, blind spots, potential entry points. But there was something else. Something in the way Uncle Richard had specified exactly how the paintings should be arranged. Look at this. Helena pointed to a sequence in the arrangement. The paintings aren't just arranged for aesthetic value. They're creating a surveillance network. Each piece's hidden code works with the others to monitor the entire space. Martinez studied the pattern. So, if anyone tries anything during the opening, we'll have evidence of every move they make, I finished. Uncle Richard turned the entire gallery into one giant security system, hiding in plain sight. A slow smile spread across Helena's face. And now we can add your new pieces to strengthen the network even further. I looked at my latest paintings, each one incorporating the techniques Helena had taught me. They weren't just art anymore. They were active participants in protecting truth and justice. Let them come, I said, picking up my brush again. The gallery opening will go ahead as planned. But this time, we'll be ready for whatever Thomas Brennan has planned. As I worked late into the night, adding new layers of protection to my pieces, I thought about how far I'd come from the artist who had once just wanted to paint pretty pictures. Now each brushstroke was a guardian, each color a sentinel. The pressure was mounting, but so was my resolve. Uncle Richard had prepared me for this moment, and I wouldn't let him down. The morning of the gallery opening dawned with an unexpected thunderstorm. Lightning flickered across the sky as I stood in the empty space, watching FBI agents disguised as installation crews positioning my paintings according to Uncle Richard's precise instructions. The storm's actually perfect, Helena said, adjusting her equipment. The electromagnetic interference will make it harder for them to detect our surveillance systems. I moved from painting to painting, making minute adjustments to ensure each piece aligned perfectly with the others. My newest works hung among the older ones, their hidden codes creating an invisible web of protection throughout the space. Latest? Intelligence suggests Thomas Brennan is planning something big, Martinez reported, joining us in her undercover outfit, a caterer's uniform that somehow still managed to look official. We've detected unusual movements at all his known properties. He's getting desperate, I replied, stopping in front of a seascape I'd painted years ago. Look at this pattern in the waves. Uncle Richard encoded a prediction about what would happen if Thomas felt cornered. Helena scanned the area I indicated, and text appeared on her tablet. He'll try to destroy everything, she read. If he can't have it, no one can. A crack of thunder made us all jump. Through the gallery's front windows, I could see people hurrying past under umbrellas, unaware of the drama about to unfold in this seemingly ordinary art space. Ms. Crawford? A young agent approached, holding a package. This just arrived. For you. It's been cleared by security. Inside was a single red rose and a card in Marcus's handwriting. I'm sorry for everything. Be careful tonight. M. He's still in protective custody, Martinez assured me, seeing my expression. This must have been arranged before. She trailed off as Helena's equipment suddenly began beeping urgently. The rose, Helena said, scanning it. It's been treated with something. The petals. Under her specialized light, tiny marks became visible on each petal, a message encoded using a variation of Uncle Richard's system. They're planning to trigger the fire suppression system, I read, my artist's eye catching the pattern. But not with water. They're going to try to destroy all the paintings at once, Martinez realized, already reaching for her radio. Some kind of corrosive substance in the sprinkler system. No, I said, studying the pattern more carefully. That's what they want us to think. Look at how the marks are arranged. It's the same misdirection technique Uncle Richard used in his early codes. They want us focused on the sprinklers while something else happens. I moved to my newest painting, the one I'd created specifically for tonight. Under Helena's lights, new patterns emerged, connecting with the rose's message. The real target is underneath us, I explained, pointing to a subtle repetition in the brushstrokes. The gallery's basement. There's something down there they want to access during the chaos. Martinez dispatched a team to investigate while Helena and I continued decoding the warning. The storm intensified outside, rain lashing against the windows as if nature itself was responding to the mounting tension. Found it, Martinez announced, returning with photographs. The building plans show an old bank vault beneath the gallery, sealed up decades ago. According to these readings, something's been stored there recently, something giving off significant heat signatures. The Carson collection, I breathed, remembering Rebecca's necklace. They're not trying to destroy evidence. They're trying to retrieve it. The sprinkler threat is just cover for their real plan. Helena's equipment beeped again, highlighting new patterns across multiple paintings. Look at this. When you combine the codes from all the pieces, they form a complete map of the old vault system. Your uncle didn't just choose this building at random. He knew, I said, understanding dawning. He knew they'd stored the stolen art down there. This whole gallery opening, it's not just about exposing their operation, it's about recovering everything they've taken. Martinez studied the security feeds. The guest list for tonight includes at least 3 known associates of Thomas Brennan. They'll probably try to use the opening as cover to access the vault. Then let them, I said, an idea forming. But first, we need to modify these paintings. Helena, remember how you taught me to incorporate active surveillance into new pieces? What if we could add a reactive element to the existing ones? Helena's eyes lit up with understanding. Use their own plan against them. The sprinkler system threat becomes our advantage. For the next several hours, we worked frantically to adapt Uncle Richard's coding system. Each painting became not just a passive observer, but an active participant in our countermeasures. The storm raged on outside, providing perfect cover for our preparations. By late afternoon, as the first caterers began arriving for the opening, everything was in place. My paintings hung innocently on the walls, appearing to be nothing more than an emerging artist's collection. But beneath the visible art lay layers of protection and surveillance that even Thomas Brennan couldn't anticipate. "Ready?" Martinez asked as the first guests began to arrive. I smoothed down my black dress, feeling the weight of Uncle Richard's letter in its pocket. "I was born ready," I replied, channeling some of his quiet confidence. "Let's give them an opening night they'll never forget." As if in response, lightning split the sky, illuminating the gallery in brilliant flashes. The stage was set for the final act of Uncle Richard's masterpiece, and I was finally ready to play my part. The gallery opening was in full swing by 8 o'clock. Art critics, local collectors, and undercover FBI agents mingled beneath my paintings, sipping champagne and discussing brush techniques. Through my earpiece, I could hear Martinez's team, tracking every movement in and around the building. "Thomas Brennan just arrived," Helena's voice murmured in my ear. Back entrance, with two men we've identified as former military contractors. I pretended to adjust a painting, using its reflective surface to observe the room. Rebecca Pierce was already here, still wearing the stolen Carson necklace, working her way through the crowd with practiced charm. The necklace caught the light. Every time she moved, its Art Deco design a brazen reminder of what lay hidden beneath our feet. "Mr. Brennan," I said warmly as he approached, playing my role. "I'm so glad you could make it, despite everything." The unspoken reference to Marcus hung between us. Thomas Brennan looked exactly like his corporate photos, distinguished, silver-haired, radiating authority. But now I could see what Uncle Richard had seen. The calculated gleam in his eyes, the slight tension in his practiced smile. "My dear," he said, taking my hand in both of his, "how could I miss your debut? Marcus always spoke so highly of your talent." The slight pause before talent was deliberate, a subtle dig meant to unsettle me. But I'd learned too much, grown too strong to be intimidated by such tactics. "Actually," I replied, guiding him toward a specific painting, one Helena and I had modified just hours ago. "I'd love your opinion on this piece. It's about hidden depths, things lurking beneath the surface." His eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the painting, a dark seascape with mysterious shapes beneath turbulent waves. "Interesting technique," he said carefully. "The layers seem to suggest multiple interpretations." "Yes," I agreed. "Sometimes things aren't what they appear to be, like bank vaults repurposed as art storage." The change was subtle, a slight stiffening of his shoulders, a barely perceptible tightening of his jaw. Behind us, I noticed his two associates moving into position near the emergency exits. "You know," he said softly, dropping all pretense, "my son always said you were smarter than you appeared. I should have listened." "You should have listened to a lot of things," I replied. "Uncle Richard tried to warn you years ago before you started using art galleries for your operation." A flash of genuine surprise crossed his face. "Richard, how did you—" "He left me more than just money and paintings, Mr. Brennan. He left me the truth about everything." Through my earpiece, I heard Martinez. "They're making their move. Heat signatures show two more men accessing the basement from the adjacent building. Brennan must have received similar information through his own communications because his demeanor suddenly changed." The polite mask dropped completely, replaced by cold determination. "Such a shame," he said, his voice hard. "All this lovely art, about to be destroyed by a tragic accident. Insurance will cover it, of course. Isn't that right, Rebecca?" Rebecca had appeared at his elbow, her smile brittle. "Of course, all properly documented." "Now!" Helena's voice crackled in my ear. I reached out and seemed to stumble slightly, catching myself on the painting. At my touch, the modified pigments in the artwork began to react, triggering a cascade effect across all the pieces in the gallery. "What's happening?" Brennan demanded as patterns began emerging across every canvas, invisible codes suddenly becoming visible under the gallery lights. "Art is truth, Mr. Brennan," I said, standing my ground as chaos erupted around us. "And the truth is finally coming to light." The sprinkler system activated, but instead of the corrosive substance his team had planned to use, it released a specialized compound Helena had developed. Each droplet contained markers that would bind to stolen artwork, creating an irrefutable signature visible only under specific light frequencies. "The vault!" Brennan barked into his sleeve mic, but it was too late. "Already secured," Martinez announced, dropping her catering disguise as FBI agents emerged from among the crowd, along with the entire Carson collection and evidence linking it to 12 other unsolved art heists. Rebecca tried to run, but stopped short as her necklace began to glow with an unmistakable fluorescent signature. proof of its stolen status. "You think this changes anything?" Brennan snarled, his sophisticated veneer completely gone. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. The people behind me, the power they wield, are all documented right here," I interrupted, gesturing to my paintings. Every transaction, every connection, every player, large and small. Uncle Richard spent years gathering the evidence, and I've spent the last week adding to it. "It's over, Mr. Brennan." As if to punctuate my words, the final phase of our plan activated. Every painting in the gallery began to emit a soft glow, each one revealing its hidden layers of evidence. The effect was beautiful and damning, art and justice combining in a display that left the remaining guests gasping in awe. "Your son chose truth," I told him softly as agents moved in. "He chose to make things right. You can still do the same." For a moment, something flickered in Thomas Brennan's eyes. Perhaps regret, perhaps just calculation. But before he could respond, the arrest was in progress, and the legacy he'd built on lies and stolen art was crumbling around him. Outside, the storm had finally broken, and moonlight streamed through the gallery windows, making the painting's revelations even more dramatic. Uncle Richard's final masterpiece was complete, justice served through art itself. As the FBI led Brennan and his associates away, Helena appeared at my side. "Ready for the next phase?" I looked at my paintings, now forever changed, but somehow more powerful than ever. "Yes," I said. "It's time to show the world what art can really do." The gallery had become more than just a space for displaying paintings. It was now a testament to truth, a beacon of justice, and the beginning of my real work as a guardian of both. The morning after the gallery raid dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the previous night's storm. I stood in the center of the space, now transformed into an active crime scene, watching FBI evidence teams documenting every painting, every hidden code, every piece of the puzzle Uncle Richard and I had helped solve. The headline in the Cedar Grove Gazette screamed, "Local Gallery Bust Reveals International Art Fraud Ring." Beneath it, a photo showed Thomas Brennan being led away in handcuffs, his mighty empire crumbling in full public view. The final count just came in, Martinez announced, joining me with a tablet in hand. 47 stolen masterpieces recovered from the vault, including the entire Carson collection, the total value. She paused, double-checking the figure. Just over $300 million. Helena emerged from her makeshift lab in the corner, her eyes bright with excitement. "But that's not even the best part. The evidence encoded in your paintings has helped us identify over 200 connected cases worldwide. Interpol is already moving on galleries in Paris, London, and Dubai." I walked to my newest painting, the one that had helped expose Thomas Brennan's true nature. Under the morning light, the hidden patterns were barely visible, secret guardians waiting to be awakened. "Ms. Crawford?" A young FBI agent approached tentatively. "There's someone here to see you." Marcus stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 agents from witness protection. He looked different, humbler somehow, the polished corporate facade stripped, a way to reveal something more genuine. "They're letting me say goodbye before I go into the program," he said softly as I approached. "I wanted you to know. You were right. About everything." I studied him. This man I'd once loved, who had tried to dim my light to hide his own darkness. "What will you do now?" "Start over, somewhere new. Try to become someone worthy of the second chance you gave me." He gestured to the paintings around us. "You know, I never really saw your art before." "Not really. I was too busy trying to control it, to make it fit into my father's plans. But now..." He shook his head in wonder. "It's extraordinary." "It always was," I replied simply. "You just couldn't see it through your own fear." He nodded, accepting the truth in my words. The house, the bank accounts. I've signed everything over to you. It's not much compared to what my father took from you, but— I don't want any of it, I interrupted. Donate it to art education programs. Help other artists find their voice. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You really have changed. No, I corrected him. I've just finally become who I always was. After he left, Helena called me to her lab. There's something you need to see. She pulled up an image of my first painting, the one Uncle Richard had bought at my high school art show. Under her specialized lights, a message appeared, written in what must have been my uncle's earliest attempt at his coding system. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, you've discovered your true power, the ability to see truth and make it visible to others. This gift is rare and precious. Use it wisely, use it justly, and never let anyone dim your light again. He knew, I whispered. Even back then, he saw something in me. He saw what we all see now, Martinez said, joining us. A guardian of truth through art. Speaking of which, she handed me an official-looking document. The FBI's Art Crimes Division would like to officially retain your services. We need someone who can help us decode other potential art-based evidence systems. Plus, your gallery would make an excellent front for ongoing operations. I looked around at my paintings, each one now serving a dual purpose: beauty and justice, intertwined. On one condition, I said. I keep teaching. Other artists need to know that their work can matter in ways they never imagined. Both women smiled. I think your uncle would approve, Helena said. Later that evening, alone in the gallery, I set up a fresh canvas. The space felt different now, charged with purpose, alive with possibility. As I began to paint, I incorporated everything I'd learned. Both the technical codes Helena had taught me and the deeper truths Uncle Richard had seen in my work all along. The image that emerged was unlike anything I'd created before, a symphony of visible and hidden elements, each layer telling a different story. On the surface, it was a beautiful piece of art. Beneath, it was a guardian of truth, a keeper of justice, a testament to the power of seeing beneath the surface. As the last light of day streamed through the windows, I stepped back to study my work. In the quiet gallery, surrounded by paintings that had helped bring down an international criminal enterprise, I finally understood what Uncle Richard had been preparing me for all along. This wasn't just an inheritance or even a mission. It was a transformation, from artist to guardian, from observer to protector. Each brushstroke was now an act of justice, each color a keeper of truth. The artist I had been wasn't gone. She had evolved into something more powerful, something that could not only create beauty, but protect it, something that could not only see truth, but reveal it to the world. I was finally truly myself. The media storm that followed the gallery raid was intense. Every news outlet wanted the story of the artist who had helped bring down an international art fraud ring. But I had more important work to do. 1 month after Thomas Brennan's arrest, I stood in my transformed gallery space, now officially a joint venture between my artistic vision and the FBI's Art Crimes Division. The walls displayed a careful mix of my coded paintings and works by new artists. I'd begun mentoring, each piece both beautiful and purposeful. The final sentencing recommendations came through, Martinez said, joining me as I adjusted the lighting on a new installation. Thomas Brennan is looking at 25 years. Rebecca took a plea deal. She's testifying against her contacts in the insurance industry. And James. I don't need to know about James, I interrupted gently. That chapter's closed. She nodded, understanding. The international investigations are going well. Your coding system, well, your uncle's system that you've enhanced, has helped recover over $500 million in stolen art so far. Interpol wants to implement similar programs in major galleries worldwide. Helena emerged from her lab, which now occupied what had once been the gallery's storage room. Speaking of which, you need to see this. She held up a tablet displaying a painting from a small gallery in Prague. Look at the brushstroke patterns. They're similar to your uncle's early code, but with significant variations. I studied the image, seeing the hidden mathematics in the seemingly random strokes. There are others out there, I realized, other artists who've developed their own systems for hiding truth in plain sight. Exactly, Helena beamed. We think. Your uncle wasn't the only one. There might be a whole network of artistic guardians out there, each developing their own methods of protecting and preserving truth through art. The implications were staggering. We need to find them, I said. Connect with them, share what we've learned. Already on it, Martinez replied. The FBI is establishing a special unit dedicated to identifying and connecting with these artistic guardians. We'd like you to head it. I walked to my newest painting, a piece that incorporated everything I'd learned about hiding messages, in art, but with a new purpose. Instead of just encoding evidence, this one contained an invitation, a call to other artists who might be doing similar work. I've been thinking, I said, studying the hidden patterns, about what Uncle Richard really gave me. It wasn't just the money or the gallery or even the coding system. It was a way to make art matter in a way I never imagined possible. Helena moved closer to examine the painting. You've modified the code again, haven't you? Made it more sophisticated? I nodded. Art shouldn't just reveal truth. It should protect it, preserve it, make it impossible to destroy. Each painting is now like a digital blockchain, but organic, alive. The more people try to alter or destroy it, the more truth it reveals. The ultimate guardian system, Martinez mused, hidden in something most people see as purely decorative. That's the real power of it, I explained, moving to another painting. The world is full of people trying to hide truth, to twist it, to bury it under layers of lies. But art can cut through all of that. It speaks directly to the soul, bypassing our defenses, our preconceptions. And now it can also provide irrefutable evidence of crimes that might otherwise go unpunished, Helena added. I touched the canvas gently, feeling the layers of paint that held so much more than just pigment. Uncle Richard used to say that every artist sees the world differently. That's why he believed in using art to protect truth. Because every unique perspective adds another layer of protection. A group of students arrived for my afternoon class, young artists eager to learn not just technique, but purpose. I'd been careful in selecting them, looking for the same spark Uncle Richard had seen in me, the desire to make art that mattered. Ready for today's lesson? Helena asked with a knowing smile. I picked up a brush, feeling its familiar weight, a weight that now carried so much more meaning. Today, we're going to learn about how art can change the world, one hidden truth at a time. As I began the class, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the gallery window. The uncertain artist, who had once let others dim her light, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had found her true purpose. Uncle Richard's inheritance had transformed me, but not in the way anyone had expected. It had shown me that art could be more than self-expression. It could be a force for justice, a guardian of truth, a light in the darkness. And as I looked at my students' eager faces, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The resolution wasn't just about closing a criminal case or finding justice. It was about beginning a new chapter. One where art and truth would work together to make the world a little more honest, a little more beautiful. One painting at a time. 6 months after the gallery raid, I sat in Uncle Richard's old apartment in Boston, surrounded by boxes of his personal effects that had finally been released from evidence. Martinez had accompanied me, both for security and to document anything relevant to ongoing investigations. Look at this, I said, pulling a worn leather journal from one of the boxes. It's dated 20 years ago. right around the time he first discovered Thomas Brennan's operation. The journal's pages were filled with Uncle Richard's precise handwriting, interspersed with small sketches and mathematical formulas. But what caught my attention were the newspaper clippings carefully pasted throughout. Articles about art thefts, gallery fires, mysterious insurance claims. He was mapping it all out, Martinez observed, looking over my shoulder. Every connection, every pattern. But why didn't he just report it then? I turned to a dog-eared page where a familiar name jumped out. Emily showed remarkable talent at her art show today. The way she layers colors, creates depth. She sees patterns others miss. Perhaps there's hope after all. Because he knew they were too powerful back then, I realized. He needed a different approach, something they wouldn't expect. He needed me. Further digging revealed more journals, each one documenting both the criminal enterprise he was tracking and my artistic development. He'd followed my career from afar, collecting every review, every exhibition announcement. "There's more," Martinez said, opening another box. Inside were dozens of small paintings, my earliest works, purchased through various agents. Each one showed signs of Uncle Richard's experimentation with his coding system, using my natural style as a foundation. He was learning from me while I was learning from him, I murmured, studying the hidden patterns. Every time my style evolved, his code adapted. A thick envelope at the bottom of the box caught my attention. Inside were photographs, surveillance shots of Thomas Brennan and his associates meeting with various gallery owners over the years. But mixed in were photos of me at different art shows, unaware I was being watched, protected. "Emily," Martinez called from across the room. "You need to see this." She'd found a hidden wall safe behind a painting, one of my landscapes. The combination was encoded in the brush strokes, a pattern I now recognized instantly. Inside was a single USB drive, and another letter. "My dearest Emily," it began. "If you're reading this, then everything has worked exactly as planned. The evidence you helped uncover is only the beginning. There are others like Thomas Brennan, powerful people who use art to hide their crimes. But there are also others like us, guardians who use art to protect truth." I read on, my hands trembling slightly. "What you've learned about encoding evidence in art is just the foundation. This drive contains everything I discovered about other guardian systems around the world. Some use music, others use sculpture, but all serve the same purpose: to preserve truth in a world that often seems determined to bury it. You're not alone in this fight, Emily. There's a network of artistic guardians out there, waiting to connect with you. The coding system I taught you is a key that will help you find them. Look for the patterns we discussed, the hidden mathematics in seemingly random creation. They're out there, waiting. But be careful. For every guardian, there's someone trying to destroy what we protect. Your gallery is now more than just a business or even an FBI front. It's a beacon for others like us, and a warning to those who would use art for darkness. You've exceeded every hope I had for you, my dear niece. You didn't just learn to encode truth in art. You've made it your own, improved it, evolved it. The student has surpassed the teacher, as it should be. Remember, art isn't just about beauty or expression. It's about seeing the world as it truly is and helping others see it too. Every painting can be a window to truth, every brush stroke a guardian of justice. Keep painting, keep protecting, keep shining your light. All my love, Uncle Richard. Martinez examined the USB drive. This could change everything. If there really is a network of artistic guardians, then we need to find them, I finished. Connect them. Create something bigger than what Uncle Richard started. We spent hours going through the rest of the boxes, finding more pieces of the puzzle Uncle Richard had spent his life assembling. Each discovery revealed new layers of his plan, new depths to his foresight. As the sun set over Boston, casting long shadows through the apartment windows, I stood at Uncle Richard's old easel, still set up in the corner. A half-finished painting sat on it, his last work, attempting to mimic my style one final time. I picked up his brush, feeling its weight, different from my own but somehow familiar. With careful strokes, I began to complete his painting, blending my technique with his, creating something new, a bridge between past and future, between his vision and my purpose. The deeper insights weren't just about understanding Uncle Richard's plan or even the network of guardians he'd discovered. They were about understanding my own role in something far larger than I'd imagined, a legacy of artists who had chosen to use their gifts not just for beauty, but for justice. As I painted, I could almost feel Uncle Richard's presence, guiding my hand just as he had been guiding me all along, preparing me for this moment when art and truth would become one. The transition from local art teacher to leader of an international network of artistic guardians wasn't easy. 2 months after discovering Uncle Richard's USB drive, my gallery had become a hub of activity that went far beyond its public facade. "We've confirmed contact with 3 more guardians," Helena reported, one morning as I set up for what appeared to be a normal painting class. A sculptor in Vienna, a glass artist in Seattle, and a textile designer in Mumbai, each one using their own unique coding system. I nodded, arranging easels while my students filtered in. These weren't ordinary art students anymore. Each had been carefully selected after showing signs of the same ability to see and encode patterns that Uncle Richard had recognized in me. "Ms. Crawford?" One of my newest students, Sarah, approached with a canvas. "I've been practicing that layering technique you showed us, and something strange happened." The painting she showed me appeared simple, a mountain landscape at sunset. But beneath the surface, I could see her natural talent beginning to encode information unconsciously, just as I had done years ago. "Nothing strange about it," I said softly. "You're just beginning to see differently. Tell me, what made you choose these particular colors for the shadows?" As Sarah explained her choices, I exchanged glances with Helena. Another guardian was emerging, right here in our gallery. Later that afternoon, Martinez arrived with new intelligence. "The remnants of Thomas Brennan's organization are regrouping. They're trying to adapt to our methods, finding new ways to hide their transactions." "Then we'll adapt too," I replied, showing her my latest work. "Look at how the code evolves when exposed to different light frequencies. They can try to decode one layer, but there are always more beneath." The painting was part of a new series I'd been developing, pieces that appeared to change under different conditions, each state revealing new information while protecting the core truth. It was an evolution of Uncle Richard's system, but with my own innovations. "There's something else," Martinez added, her voice dropping. "We've detected unusual interest in your early works, the ones from before you knew about the coding, collectors offering astronomical sums far above their apparent value." "They're looking for patterns," Helena realized, trying to understand how the code developed. "Let them look," I said, moving to adjust the gallery's special lighting system, another innovation that helped activate and protect our coded art. Those early pieces contain truths they'll never understand without the key. The key wasn't just about mathematical patterns or special pigments. It was about intention, about the pure desire to protect truth through art. Without that, the codes were just meaningless designs. That evening, after my students had left, I received an encrypted message from the guardian in Vienna. She'd discovered something in one of her sculptures, a pattern that suggested a connection to an art theft ring we'd been tracking. "The code is evolving on its own," Helena marveled, analyzing the data. "Each guardian system is distinct but somehow compatible with the others. It's like we're creating a universal language of truth," I finished, thinking of Uncle Richard's words about art speaking directly to the soul. Working late into the night, I began a new painting, one that would serve as both a test and a message to our growing network. Each brushstroke contained elements of every guardian system we'd discovered, woven together into something entirely new. "You know they'll keep coming after us," Martinez said, watching me work. "People like Thomas Brennan, who see art only as a tool for deception." "Let them come," I replied, adding layers that would only reveal themselves to those who understood our purpose. Every attempt they make to corrupt art only makes our protection stronger. I thought about Sarah and my other students, each developing their own way of seeing and protecting truth. About the guardians around the world, using their diverse artistic skills to fight deception. About Uncle Richard, who had seen this potential in me long before I understood it myself. The adjustment period wasn't just about learning new techniques or building a network. It was about accepting a role I never imagined for myself. Teacher, protector, leader of a movement that used art to safeguard truth. As I added the final touches to my painting, I could see the whole pattern coming together. Not just the coded information, but the larger picture of what we were building. A network of artists turned guardians, each contributing their unique perspective to protect something greater than themselves. The gallery, once just a dream of sharing my art, had become a fortress of truth. Every painting, every lesson, every connection we made strengthened our ability to fight those who would use art for darkness. And as I stepped back to view my completed work, I knew that this adjustment period was just the beginning. We were creating something that would outlast all of us, a legacy of truth preserved through beauty, of art serving its highest purpose. Uncle Richard had given me the key, but what we were building now was beyond anything he could have imagined. It was the future of art itself, transformed into a guardian of truth that no force of deception could ever destroy. 1 year to the day after Uncle Richard's inheritance changed my life, I received a visitor I never expected. The gallery was closed for a private exhibition, a showcase of works by our emerging network of guardians, when Claire arrived from Seattle. "Your mysterious disappearing act had me worried," she said, embracing me. Then I started noticing patterns in some of the new pieces coming through my gallery. Patterns that reminded me of what you told me about that night at the motel. I led her through the exhibition, watching her face as she took in the layers of meaning hidden in each piece. As a gallery owner, she had an eye for detail that most would miss. "The glass artist," she said suddenly, stopping in front of a crystalline sculpture. "The one whose work I started carrying last month. She's one of them, isn't she? A guardian?" "How did you know?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Because she asked me the same questions about art and truth that you used to ask back in school." Claire turned to face me. "And because I've been waiting for someone to notice what I've been hiding in my own gallery's curation patterns." The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Claire, my oldest friend, who had supported my art when everyone else dismissed it, had been encoding truth in her own way all along. "Show me," I said. She pulled out her tablet, displaying photographs of her gallery's exhibitions over the past decade. At first glance, they seemed like normal installation shots, but as she explained her system, I saw it. The way she arranged pieces to create a hidden language of authenticity, a way to identify forgeries and track stolen art through their movement in the market. I developed it after a forgery scandal. "Nearly ruined me in my first year," she explained. "I needed a way to protect other gallery owners from the same thing. I never imagined there were others doing similar work." Helena joined us, bringing her scanning equipment. As she analyzed Claire's documentation, her excitement grew. "This is incredible. You've created a completely different approach to encoding truth. Instead of hiding information in individual pieces, you've turned the entire gallery space into a verification system." "That's why you pushed me to open my own gallery," I realized, remembering our conversation the night I fled from Marcus. You weren't just supporting my dream. You were trying to help me discover this. Claire smiled. I recognized something in your work, the same thing your uncle must have seen. But I knew you had to find your own way to it. The three of us spent hours comparing notes, finding connections between Claire's spatial encoding system and our own methods. Her approach opened new possibilities for protecting truth, not just through individual artworks, but through the relationships between them. There's something else you need to see, I said, leading them to my studio at the back of the gallery. I've been working on a new piece, something that combines everything we've learned. The canvas stood 7 feet tall, covered in layers of paint that seemed to shift and change as you moved around it. I had incorporated techniques from every guardian we'd discovered, including Claire's spatial relationships, woven together with my own innovations. It's a key, Helena breathed, her equipment picking up the complex patterns. A way to connect all the different coding systems. More than that, Claire added, studying the painting with her curator's eye. It's a beacon. Any guardian who sees this will recognize elements of their own system in it. But to anyone else? It's just a painting, I finished. Beautiful, maybe intriguing, but nothing more. We worked late into the night, documenting the connections between our different approaches. Claire's gallery network could amplify our protective capabilities, creating a web of truth that would be nearly impossible to corrupt. Your uncle would be proud, Claire said softly as we finished. He saw the potential for art to be more than just expression. But what we're building here, it's beyond anything he could have imagined. I touched the canvas of my new painting, feeling the layers of truth hidden within its surface. He gave us the foundation. Now it's up to us to build something that will last. As Claire prepared to return to Seattle, now an official part of our Guardian network, she paused at the gallery door. Remember what you told me in art school? About how every artist sees the world differently? I nodded. That's our real strength, she said. Not just the codes or the systems, but the fact that each of us brings a unique perspective to protecting truth. Together, we're creating something unbreakable. Watching her leave, I felt a deep sense of rightness. Uncle Richard had started this journey, guiding me toward my true purpose. But now, I had my own role to play, not just as a guardian of truth, but as a guide for others discovering their own ways to protect it. The supportive guidance I'd received had transformed me. Now it was my turn to help transform others, to build a network of artists united in using their gifts to make the world a little more honest, a little more true. And as I turned back to my painting, adding another layer of protection to its surface, I knew that this was just the beginning of something much larger than any of us. A movement that would ensure truth would always find its way to the light, preserved in the very art that made life beautiful. 18 months after receiving Uncle Richard's inheritance, I stood in the center of my expanded gallery space on opening night of our most ambitious exhibition yet. Truth in Beauty, a global perspective. The show featured works from 23 guardians across 5 continents, each piece containing layers of coded truth beneath its artistic surface. The security systems are all in place, Helena whispered, adjusting the specialized lighting that helped activate our protective measures. And our new scanning technology can detect any attempt to interfere with the codes. The gallery had evolved far beyond its original design. What looked like elegant track lighting actually contained advanced monitoring equipment. The seemingly decorative wall panels housed a network of sensors that could detect even the slightest attempt to tamper with our encoded works. First guests arriving, Martinez announced through our discreet communication system, including representatives from the Louvre and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We'd carefully vetted each invitation, knowing that this exhibition would attract attention from both legitimate art institutions and those who might wish to compromise our work. The guest list was a calculated risk, exposing our methods enough to attract potential allies while maintaining the security of our network. Sarah, my former student and now a full-fledged guardian, approached with a group of collectors. Ms. Crawford, these gentlemen are particularly interested in your latest series. I could tell from her subtle hand signal that these were the potential allies we'd been hoping to reach, curators who had discovered similar coding systems in their own collections and were seeking answers. The interesting thing about art, I said, leading them to my newest work, is how it can speak different truths to different viewers. The painting before us appeared to be an abstract study of light and shadow. But for those who knew what to look for, it contained a complete guide to identifying authenticated artworks within major museums worldwide. We've noticed patterns, one of the curators said carefully, in some of our recent acquisitions. Patterns that seem to respond to certain conditions. Art has always been about more than what we see on the surface, I replied, using our network's coded language. Sometimes it protects its own truth. Understanding flickered in their eyes. More potential allies for our growing movement. Across the room, Claire was conducting her own subtle recruitment, her trained curator's eye identifying those who might have already discovered pieces of our puzzle. Her gallery network had become instrumental in connecting guardians across the globe. Emergency alert. Helena's voice came through my earpiece. We've detected unauthorized scanning attempts on the west wall. I moved casually in that direction, engaging with guests while observing the situation. A man in an expensive suit was standing too close to one of our most sensitive pieces, a small device barely visible in his hand. "Allow me to tell you about this particular work," I said, stepping between him and the painting. As I spoke, our security systems were already responding, subtly altering the painting's encoded patterns to protect its hidden information. The man smiled tightly, pocketing his device. Fascinating technique. The interplay of light and shadow reminds me of some pieces I recently encountered in Dubai, where Thomas Brennan's organization had maintained one of their largest operations. This was no ordinary art enthusiast. Art does have a way of connecting different parts of the world, I replied smoothly, as Martinez's team moved into position around the gallery. Though sometimes those connections can be rather enlightening. He got the message. Within minutes, he had made his excuses and left, but not before our systems had recorded everything about him and his scanning device. That's the third attempt this month, Helena noted as she joined me. They're getting more sophisticated. So are we, I responded, watching as the painting automatically reset its protective patterns. Every attempt to breach our security only makes it stronger. Later that night, after the last guests had left, I gathered with my core team, Helena, Martinez, Claire, and Sarah, in my private studio. The exhibition had been a success, not just artistically but strategically. We'd identified new allies, thwarted potential threats, and demonstrated the strength of our evolved security systems. "They'll keep coming," Martinez said, reviewing the security logs. "But we've created something they can't break because they don't understand its true power." I looked at my latest work in progress, a piece that represented everything I'd learned about protecting truth through art. It incorporated techniques from every guardian in our network, yet remained uniquely mine. The evolution was complete. I was no longer just an artist or even just a guardian. I had become something more, a protector of truth who used beauty as her shield and art as her sword. "Uncle Richard gave us the foundation," I said, touching the canvas. "But what we've built goes beyond anything he could have imagined. Every attempt to corrupt art only makes our protection stronger. Every new guardian adds another layer of defense." The gallery, once just a dream of sharing my art, had become a fortress of truth. But unlike traditional fortresses, ours became stronger through beauty, more powerful through creativity. We had transformed the very nature of art protection, creating a system that drew its power from the same source as art itself: the human spirit's desire to create and preserve truth. As my team dispersed for the night, I remained in my studio, adding final touches to my painting. In its layers of color and light, I encoded not just information, but hope. Hope that truth would always find its protectors, that art would always serve its highest purpose. The artist I had been when this journey began was gone, evolved into something far more powerful. And as I stepped back to view my work, I knew that this evolution wasn't just mine, but part of a larger transformation in how art could serve and protect truth in our world. Part 23. New Horizon. 2 years to the day after I'd watched Marcus try to burn my inheritance papers, I stood in my gallery's rooftop garden, watching the sunrise over Cedar Grove. The space had been my latest addition, a beautiful sanctuary that doubled as a secure meeting place for our growing network of guardians. "The latest reports are in," Helena said, joining me with her morning coffee. "The Guardian Network has now recovered over $2 billion in stolen art worldwide. More importantly, the encoding systems we've developed have made it nearly impossible for new theft rings to establish themselves." I smiled, thinking of how far we'd come. The garden's seemingly decorative trellises contained advanced security systems, while the flowers were arranged in patterns that could only be fully understood by those who knew our codes. "There's something else," she continued, pulling out her tablet. "Remember that painting you did 6 months ago, the one that served as a beacon for other guardians?" "Of course. It worked better than we imagined. We've identified 37 new potential guardians across the globe, artists who've been developing their own protection systems in isolation, just like your uncle did." The morning light caught the dew on the garden's flowers, creating rainbow patterns that reminded me of our encoded paintings below. Each guardian brought their own perspective, their own way of protecting truth through beauty. Together, we were creating something that would outlast all of us. Martinez arrived, looking pleased. "The FBI's new Artistic Truth Protection Division is officially operational. They're requesting your guidance on establishing similar units in other countries." "What about the educational program?" I asked, thinking of my growing number of students. 17 countries have expressed interest in implementing it," Helena replied. "They recognize that the future of art protection lies in nurturing new guardians, not just in technology." We made our way down to the main gallery space, where Sarah was preparing for her first solo exhibition. Her work had evolved remarkably, incorporating protection systems she'd developed herself while maintaining the pure artistic vision that made her pieces powerful. "Ms. Crawford," she called out, adjusting one of her paintings. "I think I've found a way to make the codes adapt in real time to attempted breaches. Want to see?" As she demonstrated her innovation, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was what Uncle Richard had envisioned. Not just a system for protecting truth, but a living, evolving network of artists who would continue to innovate and adapt. Claire joined us via video call from her Seattle gallery. "The West Coast Network is expanding," she reported. "We've identified 3 new guardians in the Pacific Northwest alone, and the spatial encoding system is being implemented in galleries across Asia." Looking around at my team, at the artists, technicians, and investigators who had become family, I felt Uncle Richard's presence stronger than ever. He had given me more than an inheritance. He had given me a purpose that combined my love of art with a mission to protect truth. "There's something else you should see," Helena said, leading me to my private studio. She pulled up a global map on her specialized display. "These are all the locations where our encoded art is now actively protecting truth." The map was dotted with points of light, each representing a piece of art that carried our protective codes. They formed a web of truth spanning the globe, growing stronger with each new guardian who joined our cause. "And this," she added, switching to another display, "is what we've prevented in the past year alone." The list was staggering: attempted art thefts, fraud schemes, money laundering operations, all thwarted by our network of artistic guardians. "You've created something remarkable," Martinez observed. "Something that will continue growing and evolving long after we're gone." "We all created it," I corrected her. "Every guardian, every student, every person who believes in protecting truth through beauty. Uncle Richard just showed us the way." As the morning light filled the gallery, I walked to my latest work in progress, a piece that would serve as both art and teaching tool for the next generation of guardians. In its layers, I encoded not just protection systems but hope for the future, a future where art would always serve its highest purpose. The journey that began with burned inheritance papers had led to something far greater than I could have imagined. We had transformed art itself into a guardian of truth, creating a legacy that would continue to evolve and protect for generations to come. Looking out over my gallery, my fortress of truth and beauty, I knew this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Each new day brought new challenges, new innovations, new guardians joining our cause. The horizon was bright with possibility, and we were ready to meet it. Uncle Richard had once written that art could change the world. He was right, but not in the way anyone expected. We had changed it not through revolution or force, but through beauty and truth, one painting at a time. And as I picked up my brush to continue work on my latest piece, I knew that this was just the beginning of our story. The future stretched out before us, full of promise and possibility, waiting to be painted with the colors of truth and protected by the power of art. The end.